All right, if you are looking to benefit and make a really wise financial decision with your housing, I want you to listen to this video and realize how you can profit on Oahu's housing crisis. So as we know, Hawaii has a 25-year housing crisis, meaning for 25 years, we don't have enough housing for the demand that we have, which causes us to have multi-generational living, not only for affordability, but literally for availability. And whether it comes to trying to buy a home or to rent a home, it's just as competitive, if not worse, when it comes to rent. So let's dive into the video to see how you can kind of work the system and plan for, really making the most of your money when you're on island. If this is your first time watching this video, my name is Marina Tolentino and I'm a real estate agent here on Oahu. And this is what I do every single week. I come to you guys on YouTube every single Friday with new information to help you become a better savvy consumer and hopefully to make wiser financial decisions with your housing and with your investments, because you have money every single month that comes into your bank account. So what are you going to do with that money? We're going to dive into this video today to really teach you how to rent a home, because it's a question that if you haven't thought about it yet, it's probably something you're going to be facing in the future, whether you're a first-time buyer or you're a renter now. Eventually you're gonna probably own a home. And so what do we do with that home when we need to make a move or we have an option to make a move? Do you want to sell it or do you want to rent it? And this is a question I've been getting a lot this year, as my clients who bought a couple of years ago are now planning a move off island. We're having that discussion. Should we rent it out? What does it rent for? Should we sell it? What's the profit we could make? Or does it cost money to sell? Those are all real questions that I'm helping my clients with every single week. So let's dive into the video. So let's dive into 5 steps. Step number 1 is going to be to prepare your home for rent. And I'll say, even before this is like a pre-step would be to run your numbers. So typically what happens is I get a text or I get an email from a client. Hey Marina, we just got orders. We're ready to leave the island. I think we want to rent the home out. And I say, great, let's look at the comparable numbers, right? So I'm running those numbers. I'm looking in your neighborhood specific. We can't look up all over the island. We can't look all over the city or zip code. We have to look niche to your neighborhood. And if it's a condo, specifically to your development only, so that condo building. Then we're looking in at the last 6 months, how much have units sold within that building that are similar size, similar square footage, etc. And we're really comparing those numbers and saying, okay, this is what the rent is, what's your mortgage? And this is typically a moment where we're humbled because our mortgages are going to be more than what the market rent is for 99% of the island. And that's just because a lot of us did a 0% VA loan, so you have no down payment, or you did a really low down payment loan, like an FHA or something. Not many of us are putting 50% down on a home purchase within the last 5 years. Like, that's just not reality for most buyers. And so we're faced with, okay, yes, we've paid off, about 100 grand of our mortgage, but it's not enough to bring our mortgage down to where rents are. So we have to have that humbling conversation of, are we willing to rent it out, let's say at $2,500 a month, even though my mortgage is $3,500 a month? Or like my situation right now, am I okay renting it out at $3,600 a month, even though my all-in costs are about $4,500? So I'm negative $1,000 every single month on one of my condos that I own. And for a lot of us, that's a scary pill to swallow, because we're like, what? Like, I still have to pay out of pocket? The rent isn't going to cover all of my costs? No, not right now, not in this market, not what we're looking at. But big asterisk here, the big but is looking at appreciation over time. And this is something, if you've worked with me before, we've had this conversation. We talk about appreciation in Hawaii. We talk about the power of buying and holding over time. And I tell you, like, honey, after year 2, you cannot sell. And probably by year 3, you're break even, if not profiting. But for people who are willing to go long-term, the game in Hawaii is long-term. Hold it for at least 5 years, even better, 10 years, and double your investment. But if you can hold it to 5, that's a really sweet spot. So for a lot of you guys, we're transferring out at year 3. We're kind of at that break even. Could we just hold it 2 more years and really make a sweet profit off of it? That's where I want to see you guys take advantage of ownership in Hawaii. So that means we're going to be eating some money for another 2 years, from year 3 to year 5. Can we eat the difference for a couple of years to then get reimbursed in 2 years later? Like that's really where we're looking at. So we're going to run those numbers with the lender that we worked with. I'll help you run those numbers and we'll just look at hypothetical situations. Okay. So let's roll into official step 1 is preparing your home. So obviously we got to move out. Household goods are packed up. We get the cleaners in. We're doing any maintenance and repairs. So your tenants move in and we already know the condition of the home. You're also going to consider any upgrades. So maybe you didn't do much work to your home at the time you were living in it, but this is a great time to consider like maybe some lighting upgrades, some ceiling fan upgrades, anything to make your home stand out against the market, to be like, ooh, this is a nice rental that I want to put my money in, versus someone that's outdated or has like raggedy carpet or something like that. Okay, so keep that in mind. And then decide if you want to rent it furnished or unfurnished. That's another big thing. Sometimes we're thinking, okay, it's going to be a great Airbnb and I'm going to rent it out, a month at a time. That's great, but we also have to consider for vacancy if that's the chance, right? Are you okay with not receiving a mortgage payment or like your rent for 2 to 3 months out of the year? Because that could happen. You could have big legs if you're doing short-term, long-term, whatever, mid-term, I guess we can call it, rentals, and realizing we're not doing short-term rentals on Oahu. Like, it's just not happening for all of us that are not in resort zones. So keeping that in mind, yes, you can rent it for more if it's furnished. Yes, you can get more month per month if you're doing 30 days at a time, but you're gonna have legs in tenancy, so you might have to be out of pocket even more, versus let's say we rent it year at a time, so it's a long-term lease, but it's unfurnished, that's gonna be a different price point. Number 2 is setting the price, right? Again, we kind of talked about that briefly of just like, what is market comps? What's your mortgage? What do you have to do to be able to rent this place, and all of those things. And then we're also gonna factor in a property manager. So that's a big question I get a lot is, well, how much does it cost if I don't physically want to manage the home? Like, Marina, I'm leaving the island. I don't want to have to think about this place. I don't want to have to call a plumber if something breaks. Who do I hire? Well, property managers tend to charge about 10% of your rent every single month. So again, in my situation, if I'm renting out my condo for $3,600, they're taking $360 a month to manage the property, which isn't a ton, but if I'm already deficient $1,000 a month and I'm adding an extra $360 on top of that, that does make a difference. So keep in mind, again, we're gonna have this conversation between you and me of like, what is the condition of your home? Do we think there might be some maintenance issues in the future? Are we gonna have pest treatments? Are we gonna have AC maintenance going on? Like, do you think there's gonna be need for that? Or is it a new construction home? It doesn't need anything, everything's under warranty. That could be a different conversation. Again, let's just get real with it, set realistic expectations so you can move forward accordingly. Step number 3 is going to be to market your property. So if you hire a property manager, they will do this for you. They'll list it on Zillow, they'll make sure it's on all of the apps, Trulia, etc. But you can also do this as the owner, even though you're not like technically managing it, you can absolutely push it out. You have social media yourself. Post it to Facebook, post it to Marketplace, post it on Craigslist. If you want to like partner up with some of your friends and family and ask them to reshare it if we have similar pools of buyers and stuff like that, or tenants, I should say. I think definitely don't sleep on that, because sometimes people just set it and forget it and they're like, oh, it'll be fine. And then 2 months go by and your place hasn't rented out. And I'm gonna ask, what have you done to market your property? And like, oh, it's just the property manager. Like, no, you are equally responsible to help sell this thing, okay? Then the next thing is gonna be screening tenants and handling paperwork. So if you are gonna do this yourself, you're DIY, maybe you're still on the island, you're like, yeah, I can manage it myself, I'll save the money. Well, you have to figure out the lease paperwork. And so I really recommend Zillow's rental manager program that they have. It's free to use. You just sign up with your email and they have a questionnaire that they'll go through and basically pre-template a lease for you. So we've done this for both of our properties that we're personally managing, and it's so easy, like super user-friendly, highly recommend. And then your tenants can easily digitally sign and pay all through the Zillow app themselves. So it makes it easy for the consumer too. It's not like we have all these different platforms and things we're trying to send paperwork through. Then once you get some applications, we're doing showings and stuff, you have to then screen their income. You're gonna do background checks. This is important. And for some of us, this is the first time we've ever screened someone's background. And it gets a little bit like, I don't know, spy mode. You're like, ooh, I can see your credit score. Ooh, I can see your rent, your employment history, kind of that stuff. So do your due diligence. And I think really just have a gut check. Like, you're gonna be interviewing these people. Don't just do everything digitally. Get them on the phone, get a feel for who they are. And you should have a trust factor, right? So just if there's a fishy feeling, it's a fishy feeling, and trust your gut and say sorry. You don't have to rent out to the first application that you got. Just making sure, I think just really going through that lease agreement with a fine-tooth comb and thinking through all the situations. And there's so many resources on the internet of what to include in a good lease, so be sure to do that. But things like a pet deposit, and what happens if they do damage, and what happens if they lose their job, can they cancel their lease, like those kinds of things, okay? Step number 5 is gonna be managing it and maintaining it. So this is just the system to make sure that your rent income is recurring, that it's set up. And again, I really love Zillow for this because it's just on autopilot. You don't have to think about it. So like I said, you're gonna have some routine things happening. Even if it's not broke, it's just maintenance, right? So for us, we are maintaining and hiring in someone to clean all of our split AC units once a year for the tenant. We are having pest treatment come biannually, I guess I could say, twice a year, just to make sure there's no roaches and ants that are building up in there. And that cost adds up, you know? And then once they do move out, your lease ends, we're swapping tenants, you're paying for a cleaner or you're DIYing the cleaner. If you're paying for a cleaner, budget for anywhere from $600 to $800 to have a professional cleaner come in. And that's not cheap. For a lot of us, that's a sticker shock of, what do you mean cleaners cost that much? Or you could spend 2 days cleaning it yourself. That's the alternative. So just realizing like, we can budget for this in advance or we can eat it out of pocket. Last thing on this note, it's not part of my 5 steps, but it's just thinking in the future. So keeping big picture of like, yes, I know this is a good investment over time. And why do I want to do this? Why do I want to make it a rental instead of selling it? And you can also borrow equity from this property in the future if you need it. So I don't always preach like HELOCs, home equity line of credits, but let's say I'm ready to purchase my next home and I have this rental over here. What if I could borrow $100,000 of the equity that I've gained over 3 years, put it into the next property, and then the rent is still covering the mortgage and we've got this all worked out. Obviously talk to professionals and myself so we can make sure this is all balancing out. But having a rental on the backside is still a great investment to move your money in the future. Okay, so keep that like game plan too. And then the other thing I didn't mention was title. So title is currently going to be in your name because you were the owner occupy, right? I always recommend setting up a separate LLC once it becomes a rental property, and that's for liability reasons. So let's say, hopefully, God forbid, but let's say the tenant decides to sue you and it's still in your current name and not an LLC. That means they can come after all of your personal assets. So your current home where you're living, your cars, like your business, whatever could be liable. Versus if we change title to a new LLC, it's all wrapped within the LLC. Nothing can come outside of that LLC. They can't come after you for things that are not within that. So it's just a way to protect ourselves. And keep in mind, when you do transfer title, it costs about like $1,200 to have a lawyer do that for you, but it's worth it. It's worth every penny. And that peace of mind, you can sleep at night knowing property is the property. It's in a rock shell, you know, it can't touch anything else, so that you can sleep at night. So I know this is kind of a little bit of a ramble, but I think it's these 5 important steps that if you're gonna rent, at least have this stuff on the forefront of mind so you can plan accordingly, budget accordingly, and really make a wise decision with your home. So I will be back next Friday with another video. I want you to comment below if you guys have specific questions. If you want to see scenarios, we can show you side by sides to see some examples that my clients and I work through, but lots to think about. You know, this is a little bit of adulting here and stepping up a game from just owning to now renting, but I think it's definitely worth considering. So I'll see you guys next Friday with another video.